There we go. All right, go ahead and hit it.
Ready? Going live.
Hey y'all, I'm James Wright and welcome to the shop. Today we have a special guest. We have John here with us. And John is new to hand tools. So he has brought in a couple tools that are from his stock. I have not yet had a chance to look at them. I've had a chance, but I don't want to. So today we are going to go through these and set them up and let John experiment with it and try for someone who's new to it.
Very inexperienced.
So we can do a whole one-on-one with this. And so this is something new we're trying. If you guys like this, please let me know. And we may be doing some more like this on other topics. And that way, I'm not breezing over a lot of those small points that I just take for granted. It's something I can actually describe and teach as we go. So we'll see what these have to happen. If we have time, we might get to burnisher and card scraper. But we'll see how that goes. So if you guys have questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat, and Sarah will curate them, and we'll try and get to as many as we can throughout the video. If you're watching this recorded, look down in the description or at the timestamp down below, and you'll see that broken up with all the questions, so you can jump roughly to where those are in the video. Yeah, so things coming up. Is there anything particular on the list? I don't think we have anything particularly coming up. Oh, next week we're going to be doing an interview with Ann of All Trades. So stay tuned for that. That is going to be a fun one, especially for Sarah. So you may see Sarah up here and I'll be at the computer.
No, it's just going to be Ann talking because I'm just going to be asking her questions.
Yeah. So stay tuned for that. We do a live every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Central Time. We'll see you then. So let's jump in here. What we got here? Tay-Tools 5.5. Okay. I've used Tay-Tools a few times. I like them in general. The only downside to them is sometimes you get ones that aren't quite as good. There's a little bit more of a variety in the quality control. But 99.9% of the time they're usable. They just often need a little more tweaking. But for the price.
Right.
Yeah, you can do that. So let's see what we got in here. Let me put it up on this camera and take this apart. And one of the things I'll look at on this is make sure that I've got a nice straight edge on here. Occasionally I've seen a casting where there's a bubble in here. It's not a huge issue, but it's just something to think through. And then for the iron, have you done any sharpening on it?
I did originally when I received it and started playing with it, but then again, that's when I started having the problems.
Yeah, it looks like there's still a bit of a hollow grind from the factory, so I wasn't sure. Cool. And then the frog. I just want to make sure that everything in here is right. I want to make sure that the frog is backed up far enough so it's not, the blade isn't touching the opening of the mouth in here. But then when this goes in, I want to make sure that there's still space in front of it so that there's a mouth. In this case, we've got 1/16 of an inch or so, which for a 5.5, that's usually about where I like to keep it, unless you're wanting to do some fine smoothing with it. So let's take this apart and see how good our connection is. Actually, first, yeah, let's do that first. I'm going to take this off, and I want to look through here. And if you look through the gap in between the two, and you hold light up here, you want to see if there's any gap coming through there. So, without squeezing them together, I'm looking through the slot in here in the iron, and I'm going to hold it up to the light, put a light finger here, and I want to see if I see any light coming between the chip breaker and that. Now here you can see on this in the past, there's some junk caught right there where the chip breaker was at. And that's usually a sign that the chip breaker wasn't mating nicely here.
Yeah, and I have been getting that problem.
And so you get chips that get caught underneath the chip breaker. So let me do a closer look at this. If there's any particular questions, go ahead and jump in and scream.
Well, related to this right this second is, what brand of plane was that again?
This is a Tay-Tools number 5, 5.5.
5.5.
Okay, yeah, this one's actually a little different. Here, you hold it up, you won't see, there's no light coming through it. But the thing I'm noticing is that there's actually a bull nose to the chip breaker on this one. So you can stick your finger underneath here and you can get it caught on there. So we're getting a nice mating fit between the chip breaker. There's no light coming through there. But if I put my finger on here, there's a big lip there that any chip coming off of this, it's going to run into that. So there's two possibilities. Number one, we can grind this down and flatten it out, which is what I would generally suggest. Or number two, you just always keep the chip breaker back, a solid 1/8 inch to 1/4 inch. You won't be able to use the chip breaker then as a chip breaker, but it would act as a cap iron. Does that make sense?
Yep. So normally that you'd want to see that fairly sharp in itself.
Yeah, you don't want your finger to be able to cut on this at all. So if you ever slide your finger on this and it catches on that, there's a problem. So anything your finger will get caught on, any chip will get caught on. Usually you want to feel any junction there at all. But on this one, there's actually quite a bit. Let's see. Well, what I think is going to happen is that this isn't the problem here, but this is the problem. So this back edge here should actually be slanted back this way, so that the very tip is the first thing to touch it. And I think what's happening is it's actually tipped this way, and so the very back of it is what's touching.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
So that's the first thing I would suggest. On this one, when people ask me, is it flat enough? And you're going to hear a lot of perfectionists out there who say you should really spend some time and flatten the sole on this because it's a cheaper plane. Phooey. Unless you are working with an nth degree on a smoothing plane, it really doesn't matter. As long as the heel, toe, and mouth are flat, you're good. And so all I would do is grab my screwdriver, which is missing. I'll drop that on the ground too.
This one?
No, I'll use this. A straight edge-ish, and then put it on there. And I want to look at it and just see if I see any gap at the heel, toe, and mouth. And this one I've got actually some epoxy on there. I've got to move it off.
Maybe a little bit at the heel?
Yeah, there's a little bit back here at the heel.
Yep.
So that means, and it's a very gradual amount from here to here. And so that means that if you're jointing, just understand that this will have a tendency to create ever so slight belly. But for general use, that's really not going to make a big difference because it's going to be flat enough that when you're pushing on it, you're actually putting a little bit of pressure to deform it that amount.
Okay.
But if you are jointing a board, it's going to touch here and it's going to touch here, and you're going to have that, 64th of an inch over the full length, maybe even less than that.
Yeah, it's not much.
100th of an inch.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, really, that's not going to make any difference.
Okay.
In its general function. So yeah, I wouldn't mess with the bottom of that at all. Yeah, then let's do some work on this. So when working on the chip breaker, this is probably one of the most common questions I get is my mouth is clogging up, the plane is having problems, and a lot of times it is that mate between these two. If you get these to mate together well, everything just tends to work out pretty well. So I'm going to pop out my coarsest grit. The nice thing with the chip breaker is it is a very soft steel. It's very ductile. You can bend it. You can, a lot of times what I'll do is put it with a pencil on this side and a pencil on this way and tap the middle and actually put it into a slight concave.
Okay.
And that way it has a spring form, so when it comes down on this, it's touching there. When you put the screw down, it flattens it out. But in this case, we want to just grind the back of this off. So this is a whole flat surface here. That the idea is that this whole flat surface would mate like that. Like that. We want to bring this down so that the front isn't touching. So I put it on here so that the back end is sitting here on the bench. And you feel that. Mm-hmm. It feels kind of like it did before. So that's what we want to get down and get this nice and smooth. And so with this, and you can see here, just with that few passes, I've got a bit of a grind on the back here. Mm-hmm. So I can see the scratches on that. If there's any questions or super chats or anything, just go ahead and scream at us.
We just got a super chat.
Hey, what we got?
Well, Alan is gracing us with his presence tonight.
Alan, my good man.
He tore his hamstring. Ow. Anyways, he is donating to the Sarah Hand Plane Fund.
What does he have then? Or is he just doing that?
Oh, he just is thinking of moi. So hang on, I gotta get my jokes out.
Any particular questions so far? I think there was one early.
Several.
Okay, what have you got?
So, Homesteading Northern Michigan asked, did you ever use any transitional planes? I love my Stanley number 27 with the Victory logo. Very easy to push.
Ooh, transitional planes feel great. They're light, they're easy to move. They just have a nice smooth feel on the wood, and they're relatively inexpensive. You can pick them up a lot of different places. I don't like them so much because they tend to be more maintenance. They go out of flat faster. They're a little bit more work in tweaking them up, and they tend to not quite hold their settings as well. So for me, it's not quite worth it. That's why most of mine are metal planes, but they are fun to play with. You ever use transitional?
No. Is this just Windex?
Yep, it's just the cheap store Windex. And for these diamond plates, they cut a lot faster than whetstones. And so I'm trying to make it not touch back here, but it's always going to. But anytime it touches back there, it means I'm hitting this and not that. So I'm just trying to keep it right on the edge. Just put my fingers on there like that. Oop, hit my thumb. Actually, let me grab my extra course. I've got one more plate that I only pull out occasionally, which is up here. Ah, there it is. Because the extra coarse plates don't last quite as long. They tend to lose their grit a little bit faster. You can see this one even has some bubble out, but they cut incredibly fast.
All right, so I have Alan's joke while you're doing that.
Ah, what's Alan's joke?
What do you call a camel with no humps?
Camel with no hump. What?
Got me.
Humphrey.
Okay, so what I'm looking for on this is we've got the scratches back here. And I want to get those scratches all the way up to the front. Because even as it is right now, we're probably going to have a little less of a feel. There's still a bit on there.
It looks a lot sharper. Just,
a little
just
bit better.
looking at it, yeah.
It should be a little bit faster with this one, as long as I can keep it on there. This one has rubber feet, and so when I put it on the edge, it wants to tip up. So I'm running one finger back here to hold it down. That's one of the problems. Oh, I shouldn't wipe that off. One of the problems with diamonds is, oh, here, do it again, is that you get this metal in here, and with whetstones, that actually is a slurry. You want that.
Right.
But with diamonds, all that does is clog it up. And so that's the reason for the lubrication of diamonds, not to create a slurry, but to allow that metal to run out.
I just want you to know there's a bet going on right now, but I want you to guess what the bet is.
How long until I slice my finger?
Nope.
What?
How long before you let John actually touch the tools?
Oh, yeah, she did. Okay. There, now you can see we've got the scratch pattern coming all the way up there.
I'm touching.
Okay, now so let's see what we got. Now we still got a bit on here.
Yeah.
And so that means
much less. Much less.
So that means we have a nice fit here. And if I look up through this, yeah, we don't have
What, you're not doing the
anything
arm
coming
hair
through there.
test?
Well, no, we're not sharpening it.
Oh, we're just. I'm half listening to what you're doing.
So
right now.
then, that means now that we've got a good fit here on the back, we need to have a good fit up here at the front. And so the way to do this is actually just to sharpen it.
Okay.
But rather than keeping it at this angle, because that's like, what, a 20-degree angle? Usually I like my chip breakers to be at like a 50-degree angle. And the reason is for that is that when the chip comes off of the plane, you want to hit the chip breaker and curl up. Once it does that, it's actually putting pressure back into the chip.
Okay.
And so if you ever get to tear out, it's actually pushing that tear out back down in so the blade can slice off, so you actually get less tear out if you have a higher angle on this. Some of my favorite ones, let's see if I've got it over here. I don't, it's in one of the planes. It's a prototype from DFM Toolworks. And I love it because it's designed for actual chip breaking. And it's one of the few new irons that do that. So here, I'm going to let you try this. I'll show you. So do you want to learn freehand sharpening, or are you wanting to use your jig tonight?
Either way,
Okay.
I think the jig is probably easier for a beginner, but
Yeah. No, if you, well,
Okay.
we'll work with the jig.
Okay.
But it'll do freehand on this. I'll show you what we got. So on this, so it's exactly the same thing as using iron. On this, normally we'd set it on here and we lift it up until we feel that bevel, which would
Right.
be like right there. But we don't want it there. We're going to lift it up to something like that.
Okay.
And this angle doesn't matter because you're on a chip breaker, whatever. You're not worrying about cutting.
But just steeper than what it is.
Yeah, you just want it to be a little steeper because what we have right now, so we have this 20-degree angle,
Right.
and then there's a bull nose. There's actually a flat on there. We want to get rid of that flat because we want it to come to a point.
A point, right.
So in this one, I'll find that angle, lift it up a little more, just like that. And what I'm doing when I'm on there is I have one finger on this side, one finger on this side, and those are what are putting the pressure down in. I don't need a lot of pressure, just a finger's weight.
Okay.
Here, why don't you give that a try. I want you to turn it like this. There you go.
And then leave this way?
Yep. So you feel the bevel,
So I feel
then
the
lift it
bevel.
up a bit higher,
Okay.
like there, and run another. Now what you're going to be running into here is as you get to this end, you're slowly lowering it down.
Oh, okay.
And so especially as you get to the far end, you're lower, and as you come back, you're lifting it up high. That's not a huge issue. It creates a bit of a camber on
So
there.
concentrate on keeping
Yeah,
it.
but as the more you're doing it, the lower and lower and you're going. So just think about keeping up a little higher.
All right, I'm going to ask you another question.
Yeah, what you got?
Heseblesens? Is there any notable difference between the US and Brit made Stanleys?
Not really. Okay, so we've got a little bit more pressure on this side. So when you're putting it down, you can see the thicker
Right.
sharpening there and thinner on this side. So that means when you're putting it down, you're putting more pressure on this side than on this side. But we have a sharp edge running all the way across there now, which is all we need. So let's see how that feels. Put it on there, squeeze it down, and we still got a bit of a bubble. So over here, that's great. Here, let me show you this. So on this side, this is really, really close. But on this side, we still have a large catch. That's because you were grinding more on this side and less on that side. Here, you want to feel
Okay.
it?
Yep. No, I can see it. You know,
Okay.
with the pressure from the right hand versus the left hand.
So when you grind on it, just think about putting a little more pressure on this finger. Here. You want to go for it?
Sure. So
little
it's
higher.
there, and then bring it up.
Perfect.
Okay.
Now with freehand, you might want to think about moving at the ankle and having your whole body go with
Okay.
it. Because what that'll end up doing is it'll lock your arm in place so you're always maintaining the same angle. Because if your body's in one place and your arm is moving, then your fulcrum is a lot closer to the work. But if you can move it down to your ankles, your fulcrum is way down there, so your arm stays put in comparison. And the better you get at it, the more and more you can move up your body until eventually you're just moving at the hips, and then you're just moving at the shoulders, and then eventually your wrist gets used to it.
A little closer.
Yeah.
Still a little bit different there. But.
See how close we are. Yeah, it's a lot better. For general use, that is all you'd need.
Yep.
However, if you want to make it for smoothing, you probably want to take it just a little farther. But I wouldn't do it on this one anymore.
Okay.
So let me just make sure. Because there's something, looks like there's a bit of a gap on this side. Why is there a gap on that side? Wonder if it's sitting on something in there. Because sometimes you'll have junk on the iron. Like on this one, you can see old shavings on there, but it's not there right now. Sometimes you'd have a bit of a junk on there. It would cause it to teeter-totter on top of that. We've got a little bit of a gap there. So I want to actually try this a little bit more. And what I'm going to do here is rather than putting pressure on the outside, so I put pressure on the outside here, I'm going to take off more material on these two edges than I will in the middle. And that will actually cause that iron to be rounded like that.
Right.
If I put pressure in the middle, it'll take off more in the middle and less on these two sides, which could cause it to turn into that shape. Right now it has ever so slightly that amount of shape on it, so I'm going to do it with just a finger in the middle here. Let's see what that gave me. Yeah. So now I'm going to pinch it where the screw would be and got a little bit of a catch there, but not much. So for general use, that would be acceptable.
Okay.
Do you want to take it more?
Sure. Let's make it. Let's make it perfect.
Now, from this point on, because we're really close to it, I'm going to get rid of these extra cores. And I'm going to bring over the plate. Because there's really no reason that it be polished, such as stropped, but a cleaner surface on it gives you a cleaner surface. There's less for chips to catch on. So, and I do need to pop one of those out.
So
if they're on the outside ones, I can do them like this, but on the middle one, I can't do that. What's that, babe?
while you're doing that, we have a question for John.
What's that?
So Alan wants to know what you're wanting to learn, John, and what do you want to do with your new skills?
First of all, I want to learn this, learn how to sharpen it and keep my tool in proper working order. If my daughter Emily is watching, she paid a lot of money for this, so she wants me to be able to use it. And then I want to move a little bit away from as much of the electronic tools and the table saws and things like that, and be able to start making a few things using some of the hand tools. So I want to get better at the hand tool woodworking. If that helps answer the question.
I think it does. And hello, Emily. I hope you're watching.
Okay, so now at this point, we're basically sharpening it, just like we would a plane. So I want to make sure that these come to a point. So right now I'm going to look at it and see if we actually have a point. And I don't think we do. I think we still have a bull nose there, and it's almost coming to a point here. So what I'm doing is I'm looking down on it, and I'm seeing if I see the reflection of the light. You can see there's a bit of a line on this side, but it's almost sharp over there.
Yeah.
And if we look at it here, we've ground a bit more this side than we have on this side. So I'm just going to do this quick like. And my finer stones, actually let's put it in this.
I'm assuming this is Emily saying hello, Dad. Why hello, they're 95?
What was that?
I'm just telling him, I'm assuming that's who's saying hello.
What was the name?
Why hello, they're 95?
Why hello there?
I don't know. It's not James, it's not me.
Now my two finer stones over here will actually cut pretty quickly because they don't get used that much in comparison to the coarse ones. When I do it on the coarse, I put a lot of time into them. Whereas with these ones, it's almost there, a little more. The diamonds on these last a lot longer on the fine ones. The coarse ones, the diamonds tend to wear off pretty quickly. So I'm thinking about putting more pressure on the other side. I'm not actually doing it. I'm just thinking about it. And just that little bit of thinking about it actually causes your body to do it.
Okay.
Because you don't want to overdo it and put all the pressure on one side, because then you'd cause deformation in the iron. Yeah. It's hard to see because my fingers
All
are
right,
so
John,
dirty.
we have another question for you. Cut Choice wants to know, how long have you been doing power tool woodworking?
Power tool woodworking, probably 4 or 5 years. On a pretty steady basis. Before that, it was just occasional, but there's usually something being made at all times now in the garage.
It's fun when you have a whole bunch of projects sitting out there.
Yeah,
Like, I need to finish that one up.
Yep.
Oh, I should finish that one too.
And I have a list. And
Okay.
Death.
I mean, the grind on that is much more consistent now too. Yeah.
Just clean up the underside here. There. You can see the difference on that one. I was just hitting the tip up here rather than the whole thing back. And the reason for that is that this was a little bit higher angle than the other one was because they're riding on the back of the strop. So let's see what that gives us. There's still a bit of a catch on this side. Still a tiny bit. What am I running into? This is the point where you get really sweaty, where you kind of play through things, because every one of these is different. Every one of them you tend to run into a little bit different item. So I'm trying to see.
Is it possibly the back of the blade?
Could be, and just having a different spot. Just ever so slight hair on there. It would work on like a 2,000th of an inch shaving. We'd have no problem with it. But if you want to take it down to a 1,000th or less, it would catch on that. So, just take a look. Ah, okay. So it's not, we have our bevel on this side, and we have our flat on this side, but there's actually a slight, tiny bevel running back about that angle, right along there. So it wasn't perfectly flat, it was actually like rounded.
Okay.
So that just means I need to take this bevel down farther. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And it's really, really hard to see, but there's just a shiny spot right there.
Yep, no, I see that. And
When you hold it right at the
kind of
angle.
Stops, yeah, at a certain point.
So let's do a little more grinding.
So, John, but I'm supposed to ask you who your favorite customer is.
Uh-oh. How about I just keep it at my family?
Well, which member of your family?
No comment? Is that a good answer?
Well, I think Kaylee would disagree with you.
Now, if you didn't want to do this with hand tools, you can always jig this up just like you would with the iron.
Okay.
It's the exact same thing. So when we get the iron sharpening, I'll have you do a lot more with that, because there's a few things to talk through on that one that will, or can, cause issues. Spending a lot more time on each of these than I normally would. So I'm trying to get, yeah, that's looking better. Okay. Here, feel this. I've got a catch on this side, but on this side you can't.
Yep. And
So this is where it needs to be. You
somewhere
just need to put a little more pressure on that side now.
in there. Okay.
Not much. And when you get the bench rocking and making its own sound, you know you're doing it right. That's the one downside to the rubber flooring, is that it tends to get a frequency of a little bit of a rock in
Okay.
it rather than being on the concrete. Feels sharp. How's that feel? Yeah, that's what I want. Finish her off.
What grit are these things?
Well, with diamonds, the grit doesn't directly compare, but it would be something around 500, 800, 1200
Okay.
ish. Yeah, that's what we're looking for. Yeah, feel that.
Oh yeah, there's nothing there now.
So now, when you're rubbing your finger on here, it slides right over. You really can't catch your fingernail on it. So any chip that comes through there is just going to slide right off of
Okay.
that. So chip breaker's done. Well, let me just make sure that we didn't create a gap in here. So I'm going to hold them together with my finger and look through there and see if I see any light coming in through this point. Here, you want to take it? Whew, I'm sweating. It's the fun of the lives is I turn the furnace, I turn the air conditioning off,
And I'm
so it
sitting
starts to
here
get
in
warm
a
in here.
hoodie going, da-da-da.
Okay, so chip breaker's good, and most of the time, that's the big problem. This causes more issue than anything else. That's one of the reasons why I tell a lot of people when you're first getting started, these are so easy because there's no chip breaker. There's no major adjustments in it. It's all just one knob, and these are really easy to set up. They just have a few limitations and function. But once you learn to set up a regular plane, those just are a walk in the park. So let's see what we got here. Okay, that is probably 350. So if it came down to a single atom, it would be a 0. And as dull as it can be is about 1,000. And so this is actually on a sharpness tester that I can bring out. And so normally I want to get it down to, if I'm doing fine shaving, I want to get it down to around 100.
Okay.
So a 350, that will cut most shavings right there. That's actually not half bad. But if we want to do really fine work, it's got to be sharper than that.
Okay.
So let's work on this, and we'll do it with the jig.
Okay, so Pablo super chatted for John's Wright to sharpen a little bit.
Yeah, we'll be doing that more with this. Since you were wanting to do more with that, I'll set up on this and show you.
Okay.
So when it comes to flattening the back, it looks like you've done some work on there.
A little bit.
When flattening the back, you really don't need, people really get bent out of shape on the back. As long as it's smooth, that's all that's matter. If there's dimples, if there's scratches that extend out into the tip, then those will show up in the scratch pattern that this will make.
Okay.
But if you have a smooth surface running all the way across there, like you do here, the back is good. You never have to touch the back again other than working the wire off of it.
Okay.
So for sharpening's sake, yeah, there's really no reason for you to do that. That one's actually in great, great shape. I could show you some of mine that are far worse than that and work perfectly.
It's because I watched a few of your videos.
So we're just going to work on the bevel.
Okay.
So do you know what angle you want it to be at?
No.
Okay. Usually for planes, I like it at 35.
Okay.
Because the bevel is down, it doesn't matter what that bevel is, because the back is the bevel angle. That's what it cuts at, because it's mirroring the bed. So if your bed is at 45 degrees, it doesn't matter what that is, you're going to be cutting it at 45 degrees. The problem is, if you were to make this bevel 45 degrees, then the bevel would be flat to the wood. And if there was any bit out, the tip would never engage.
Mm-hmm.
Also, if it's 45 degrees, you're never going to be able to dive into the work. You can start at the back and go into the wood, but you can never actually dive into it. So you want a relief angle on there of some amount. Minimum is usually about 5 degrees, so you'd never want to do this more than 40 degrees. I like 10 degrees and doing it 35.
Okay.
The higher the angle, the longer the edge lasts. The lower the angle, the quicker it will dull. But it will pull itself into the work much easier. So if you put a 20-degree angle on this, you could set the bed, and with very little pressure, it would dive into the work and pull along. It feels great.
Once we establish it, the cleanup then, if I sense that it's not working properly, the cleanup is a lot quicker once it's established as well.
I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what you mean.
Resharpening it and just...
Well, it depends on if you're doing a secondary bevel.
Okay.
A lot of people will, they'll sharpen the main at like a 30 degree, and then they'll make the secondary at 35. And that way they're just hitting that secondary. There's a very, very tiny amount at that they're hitting at 35 as they keep going down. Eventually that gets all the way back down to here, and then you're sharpening the whole thing at 35, and you're not doing any time. So then you have to take the time, take it to the grinder, put it down to 30 degrees, and then you got that 35 degree second bevel on there. So it saves time in the short term, but then ends up being the same amount of time in the long term because you have to regrind it. So usually with mine, my personal is I have it 35 degrees, just a straight bevel all the way across. Most of the time they're going to come to the factory with like a 30 degree. And so I'm just going to put a secondary 35 degree on there and wear it until it gets all the way down. And once it's all the way down, then I just keep it at 35. Especially with diamond plates, because I don't have to wet them down. I don't have to soak them. They just go so much faster. I mean, it's just spray, shoot, and it's done. So we're going to do it with your stones and show you guys something different, because I always do it with the diamond plates. And John brought in his. So let's take a look at what we got in here. So we've got sharpening gauge. This is a rather affordable one you can pick up just about anywhere. Is this one from Harbor Freight?
I don't think so.
No, it's a different one. But it's the exact same one. You can get it from 100 different places and different brands, and they're probably made in the same factory. And then we've got a King Waterstone two-side. This is actually what I started on. It was a King Waterstone. I had a, what was it? I think it was 600 and 1,000. This one is a 1,000, 6,000. So you've got a 1,000, which is really smooth, and you have no, that's the 1,000. Then you have 6,000, which is really smooth. And then we've got over here, we've got, what company is that?
I think that was a Norton, right?
Norton, here we are, 4,000, 8,000. So We've got 1,000, 6,000, 4,000, 8,000. So the question is, what grits do you want to use, and how often are you going to be sharpening? If you are like me, and you let the sharpening go way too long, you've got to go back a few grits. And usually for me, that means at least 500.
Okay.
But if you're careful with it and you don't let it go too far, you can start at 1,000 or sometimes even start at 4,000. Especially with whetstones, if you're trying to bring back a lot of dullness, starting at 1,000, you're going to be spending a lot of time there trying to get that down to sharp. Because the first grit, the lowest grit you have, is what actually sharpens it. Everything else is just cleaning up the surface and making it smoother.
Okay.
Or some people tell you sharpening and honing, which is basically what it is. Though the definition of honing, some people say strop is honing, or anything over 8,000 is honing, and then some others say, once it's sharp, then everything else is honing. And
I think when I first
semantics.
received it, I had some 600 paper, and I started with 600 paper and then moved up to the stones.
Yeah. And I know a lot of people who just get the coarse diamond, and the only thing they'll use that for is reestablishing a bevel or serious grinding work, as long as they take care of it and bring it back. So for where this is, it's actually pretty sharp. So we're really good here. Let's actually start. What was this one again? This is 1,000, 6,000, and 4,000. So let's do 1,000, 4,000, 8,000.
Okay.
So trying to figure out.
That's not labeled, so
this is the one. That's the 4,000. That's the 1,000. Now you can feel on the side that just feels a little coarser than that.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Whereas the side, once it gets worn down, it's kind of hard to tell on the wearing side. So here's the problem though.
Right.
That's too wide. So if you're working with this, you're not going to be able to use it on here. You have to skew it to do that, in which case it's not going to work. So if you want to do it on this, it would be freehand. Except for I'm rocking a piece of junk. Don't want to do that. I'll set my towel here in a moment. But with this one, that's plenty wide enough. We can do it on this. So do you want to do it freehand?
We'll give it a try. Let's give it a try.
Then let us. I do not want to use window cleaner on these because, well, some window cleaners would be fine. Some of them have ammonia, and that can cause problems with, especially the man-made stones. But for the other these, as long as you don't let them freeze, water is fine. Now, normally, I would want to soak them completely, but for the little bit we'll do.
That's my normal soaking. How long do you let them soak for? 10 minutes?
Well, normally I just keep them in the water.
Okay.
But in this case, that's not going to fit.
It usually
in
goes corner to corner.
Oh, I see, like that. Oh, you've done this before. We're gonna let. If I was thinking, I would have had it soaking ahead of time, but I'm normally not thinking. So.
Well, while you're doing that, Pablo deserves a mom joke.
Oh, we got another one?
Yep. You ready?
Get rid of that steel. What you got? Let's just use this.
Do you know what's a little known fact about cow farts?
Cow farts what?
They come from the dairy air.
There's a reason I married her.
So you looked that up, or Pablo did?
No, I look them up.
Okay.
That's what I do on my phone when I have a few minutes every day is collect
Soaking it up
jokes.
nicely. Now, for those of you watching,
Soaks right in.
the big difference between whetstones and diamond stones is they cut very, very differently. With whetstones, you actually create a slurry on top. And that slurry almost acts like a random orbital sander and will polish the surface. And so that slurry is going in different directions. It slips and slides all over it. And so you get scratches that go in every different direction on it. So you can get a polished look off of whetstone. With diamonds, you can't get a polished look on it because you have an aggregate that just scratches it. So all the scratches are in the exact same direction. And so you're always getting this scratched look on it. So a lot of people really do not like diamonds because you can't get a polish off of them. You can't get that same mirror appearance you can with whetstones. But in the actuality, you look them at under a microscope and it's the same cutting edge. But whetstones feel so good. There's just something about them that's very rewarding. So let's do that one. Let this one soak. So, to do this free-handed, you can do the same thing. One finger on either side.
Mm-hmm.
Feel the bevel. You see yours. You've got a main bevel here from the factory. Is there a secondary? There's a rock here.
If there is, I didn't intend for it to be there.
No, and that's not a problem. I'm just trying to match. Yeah, if you look at it really close, you can see there's a shiny spot running right across the tip.
Yep.
And then you have a scratch right back here and a scratch right back here. So in the factory, there was a hollow grind in there. And it touched here, and then for the honing was right on that secondary bevel. So that means that that little secondary bevel is going to be almost impossible to feel. So doing this freehand would be kind of tricky. So what you want to do is feel that bevel, and we're going to lift it up just about that far. And it's going to be the exact same thing. And on this one in particular, because we're trying to keep that, think about rocking at the ankles. Okay, we're going to be having a problem with this stone then. Yeah. On this stone, we've got a black line here and a black line here, and it's not touching here in the middle. So that could be that the iron has a waviness to it, or it could be that the stone isn't flat. So I don't know if you have a flattening stone.
No, I do not.
That's one of the problems with wet stones, is that they go out of flat. So I'm going to use my extra coarse diamond here.
So is
Let's
that
see
a
what we've
hint
got.
for Christmas for you, John? What you want on your list? Since you got family watching, I'm just saying.
There's an iron there. Almost. So you can see here, it caught there and caught there. It's not quite easy here. So it's slightly out of flat.
Yeah, that might be from just doing the chisels right down the middle or something.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's one of the problems with whetstones, is you got to keep them flat. With diamonds, they just stay that. And so you can see where it's well worn there. And so if I do it with this, it's not a huge issue, other than the surface you're planing will now have whatever reference your has on it. And that's not a huge issue. I mean, You're never going to be able to feel that in the wood. But where it does come to be a problem is, man, I did cut myself. Oh no, I lost my train of thought. Where is this a problem? Is when you're, no, it's not the back. What was it? Oh, when you're flattening a back, if you have any waviness in this, now you have to have the chip breaker mate to that.
Oh, okay.
But for a regular bevel, it's not a huge issue, other than the fact of, if this is flat, like it does appear to be, when I'm working on this, now I have to make this conform to that. And so it's going to take a while to grind down until it conforms to that. And then I take it over to this plate, and then it has to reconform to that one. So in this case, it's just better to flatten the whole thing. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So. Let's see
All
what we
right.
get here.
Ready
What
for
you
a
got?
question?
Yep.
So Flyfishinchief wants to
There you
know,
go.
how did John become interested in hand tool woodworking, and do we know what kind of steel the iron is made out of?
The Tay-Tool irons are, they're not the best iron in the world, but they're not bad. And you know, for a beginner, that's actually not a bad thing. It just means you have to sharpen a little more.
Okay.
But the more you have to sharpen, the more you learn it, the faster it goes. And then eventually you get to the point where, like, yeah, I want to sharpen less. Let's go buy a nice iron. They're not, I'd say out of all the irons I tested, they were 4 or 5 from the bottom, which sounds bad, but in reality, they're all pretty good cutting tools when you're comparing. Like,
So you can just replace the iron. Versus
yeah.
the
Oh
whole-
yeah. You can buy, Lee Nielsen, Veritas, and things like that. My favorite is Veritas PMV 11, but they're expensive. As are the best things in the world. Okay, so we've gotten this flat. Let me see where we're at, and then I'll hand it over to you. Yeah, see, it looks a lot better on there.
And the interest was from watching people
Oh.
like James.
Sorry, I've been
Answer
on the
that
wrong
other
camera.
half of that question.
So now you can see on here, I've got a nice scratch
Yeah, all the
pattern
way
going all the way
across,
across, and
right.
these are nice and flat. So here, I'm going to let you go at this. Go over to this one. Here, I'll let you step over on this side. So turn it to its side. Grasp it with just your right-handed.
Yep.
Yep. Perfect, yeah. 2 fingers underneath, and then you can bring over your other finger on this side. So you want basically as many fingers you can get on there without cramming them, and then you don't want them to ever slide forward on the stone. Because what happens when they slide forward on the stone is the iron is going to catch it. And suddenly you'll see that there's this rust spot on your stone. And you can't figure out where it's coming from. It's shaving off layer after layer after layer of skin until you get down to the point where you're bleeding on it.
Okay.
I've done that a few times. Okay, so do you feel the main bevel?
Yeah, I think so.
Down a little bit more. Down, right there. There's the main bevel.
Okay.
Okay, and then lift it up a little higher. Right about there. That's about where you want to lock it at.
So James, is that where you said that you're focusing on the wrong iron when you're getting to blood?
Okay. There you go. And lift it up just a little more. Right there. And for those of you wanting to watch, he's actually moving right down at the ankle, and so he's locking his arms, locking his elbow, and so you're basically turning your whole upper body into a jig. And once you sharpen 5 or 6 times like that, you kind of get to the point where your body learns it. Let's see what we got. Here, wipe it off on there. Okay, so we want to look at the scratch pattern on the nose. Let's see what we got here. Is that hard to see? Where are we at? Okay, yeah, that is right. Nice. That's really well done. So we've got just a tiny bit running all the way along there. That's kind of dull colored. It's not shiny.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a little bit coarser grit. But if you feel the back here, you're going to feel a burr.
A little bit. Yep.
Now feel in the middle, and then
more.
feel out here. So you've got a good solid burr on this side, the perfect amount in the middle, and no burr over here. So when you flip it back over, you need to put more pressure on this side.
Okay.
So it's just like the chip breaker. You're putting more pressure on this side, which is actually pretty common when you have to skew it. You're generally putting more pressure on the side that leads. So just think about putting more pressure on that side. Okay, lift it up a little higher, a little more, right there. Perfect.
Good.
Yeah. Now feel for that burr on the back. Feel it all the way across?
It's still a little less on that corner, but...
Yep, so you still need a little more. Because on the first stone, you want to make sure you get that burr all the way across.
Okay.
Yeah, let's actually resoak it as we're getting... Move that slurry around. So what happens is you push it forward, all the slurry comes out here. So occasionally you want to drag it back so you're recutting the whole spot rather than just up there. There's the main bevel. And right there, perfect. Here hold it like this, because right now you're out on the side. The back 3 fingers, put those underneath the support. Yeah, there you go. There you go. That allows you to feel the angle a little bit better. Because what you were having was you had your hands out here, and so there's less fingers back here to control it, whereas if you turn it in like this, you get to feel it back here on your palm.
Okay.
That lets you just feel the angle a little bit better. Let me change this. Perfect. Yeah, especially with whetstones, you can put a little bit more pressure into them. They're not going to be, you're not going to hurt them quite as much unless you're working with little thin chisels. Then you start grinding a spot in with the chisel.
Feels more consistent there.
Ah, yeah, we got a good burr all the way across now. Cool, so we're done with this stone. So let's set this one aside. And let's pull out the 4000 grit. So on this one, let's set up the bevel.
Sure.
Now, I don't know what that angle is that we have on there. That angle could be anything. It really doesn't matter. Now, if you really want to get into it, you could bring out the what's that called? Compass? Not compass. Whatever the thing is that measures angles. And you can find out what that is, and you can set it, and you could come in here and then adjust this to the exact angle you want. And then once you get this to the exact angle you want, you make a mark on a board, and so the only important thing is how far in is it from the edge.
Okay.
And so if you put a stop block on a piece of wood, then you could set this on that stop block, slide this up against the piece of wood, and always have the exact same angle.
I think there was some on that, actually, some instructions on the side of that, maybe?
Yeah, you'll have measurements here for whatever the angle is. So on this one, 30 degrees is 30 millimeters. So from this front edge to the tip of the iron, if that's 30 millimeters, you're at 30 degrees. Let's see, 25.
You said you wanted to go to 30. Oh, that's 25.
Yeah, this one doesn't have a 35 on it. It says 30 and 25.
Okay.
So if you want to do that, otherwise I'll just put it at what we had before. So we're going to have it right there is what that was. And then crank it down. Make sure we're right there. So what I'm doing is I'm looking at it from the side.
Right.
And you can see the bevel's up just that amount. And that's what you were sharpening at earlier. So you can crank that down. And so if you really want to match this every time, now that this is on there, set it on a board, put a stop back up, throw a couple pin nails into it, and you have a stop on there every time. You can always set this back to the exact same spot.
Okay.
So for this one, because this is wide enough, we can do a slightly different grip on this one. So on this one, here, what I like to do is put fingers on from both sides, put that on there, and then bring it forward and backward. Or, let me show you a couple different grips. You can kind of going 45 degrees from me, and it's the same grip as before, 2 fingers underneath, 2 on top, and grip it that way. I don't like that as much because it kind of feels weird to push diagonally across me. I generally prefer to either 2 thumbs like this,
straight out from your
or
torso.
Yeah, if I'm on my lower bench over there, I will grab it like that with two hands on either side because it's a little lower down.
Okay.
Up here on the bench, I'm probably going to rotate around and put fingers on top and thumbs underneath. So whatever's more comfortable for you. And from this point on, the nice thing is you're honing, so it's not going to take that much.
Okay. And it's still rocking motion.
Actually, here, let me show you a quick trick. Here we go. You take it off. What we can do is all you're trying to do is get rid of the scratches from the previous one. So we're going to take this Sharpie. The silver on silver is not going to work, is it? Do I have my black one over here? I was going to say, I normally have a black one here. It disappeared.
I don't see any. There's a black.
Yeah, I'll just eyeball it then. Because what you can do is just put a Sharpie across there.
Yep.
And after the Sharpie's gone, you're good.
Okay.
Because that means you've gotten down through all the material that you had on there. Is that another super chat, babe?
Dana Hansen became Welcome to Fans by Wright.
Okay, wait here. Now you look at this, we've got the same problem again where it's touching here and touching here, and there's a gap in the middle. So if you want to keep going, you can and conform it to that, but it's going to take a little longer. Or
and these don't take long to, generally, to flatten the stones?
not if you keep on it.
Yeah.
If you let it get really out of flat, then yes. So now we got a nice flat surface on there. Now the one thing I want to make sure is that I get everything off of this, because if I ever wanted to flatten this side, I don't want to take this grit onto that because this is a coarser grit than the other side.
Okay.
So I'm going to wipe that off while you do that. Any questions? What?
Yes, every time I gotta ask when you start talking.
I feel like I'm rocking on something. Okay.
So Alex wants to know, what is the best way to cut a groove for a drawer bottom without a router plane or fancy Stanley 4555?
Easiest way would be a Stanley 50. Or a tongue and groove plane. Or the best way I could say is go ahead and make your own little grooving plane. I have 3 or 4 videos on making these. I did a live not too long ago where I made this completely live out of a piece of firewood. Something like this is great because I can just go to town and be done with it. It's set up to make a 1/4 by 1/4 by 1/4 groove. So, perfect. So I'm looking to see if that scratch pattern has changed, and so it's not as dull as it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's a little bit shinier. So that's that plate. Now, let me just check this. That was the 4,000, yep, that's the 8,000. Yeah, this one's got that streak down the middle too.
They've only been used a couple times, but It doesn't take,
it doesn't take much. The high grits tend to get clogged up as well. So I just want to make sure I get rid of all that. Here. Clean this off. Make sure I'm not carrying over any grit. There we go. It's sticking. That's a good thing. Yeah, still a little bit no. There, that's better. There you go. So 55, we're just going to finish this up and we'll set up the plane. This will take just a couple moments here. So we're having a little bit of fun today because this is kind of a new format. So I wasn't sure how far we get today. I was hoping we'd get through both of them, but doing things from the beginning, it's actually taking a little longer than expected.
But the same principles should apply to...
Yeah, I know, it's the exact same thing on that, except for on the block plane, it's easier because there's no chip breaker. Okay, let's see what we got. It's usually not going to take much on these other ones. Yeah, see how that got really bright and shiny all the way across there? Let me see if I can show you guys this. Because it is, the very tip has this shiny spot you can see reflecting there. That's what we're looking for. Especially with the 8000 grit, you start to get to this really nice polish. So, on this, we've got a fine burr on the back and a nice polish on that side. So we're going to take it off of this. And then on this one, we're just going to get rid of that burr. And that's about all it's going to take. So normally I strop to get rid of the burr.
Okay.
And so I'll do 2 or 3 strokes on this side, 2 or 3 strokes on that side. I'll go back and forth. If the burr's really bad, it'll take 4 or 5 flips. If it's really fine, it'll just take 1 and it comes off. But with the stone, you actually do a little bit more polishing on there. And that has gotten rid of the burr. Actually, well, maybe there's just a tiny hair of the burr on this side. So what it did is it took the burr from being this way to then being this way.
Yep.
But it's fallen off. You can't really feel the burr.
And can you use the strop on this side as well to get rid of that?
Yeah, yeah. And so I would do, here, strop. And so I would do 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and just go back and forth on that until it came off.
Okay.
Because the strop actually is like 16,000 grit-ish. Clean that off. Yeah. See, that feels nice. If I were to really work at it, right now I'm guessing that's at like 175, which is really good.
Okay.
If I were really working at it, I might be able to get it down to like a 130. But in all honesty, to get it down that sharp, 5 or 6 strokes in, it's going to be just as dull as it was before. So let's clean this up, put the plane together, and do some testing on it. Actually, just go ahead and set it in there.
All right, I'm going to throw a question out there.
Yes, please.
Chuck Bush, is it all right to use green wood to make a new froe handle? I got my hands on some nice black ash from a recent felled tree.
Yeah, for a froe handle, green wood, that's great. It's actually a lot easier. The only thing you're going to have to think about is that on the froe handle, it's going to shrink as it dries. So you're going to run into the problem that it might get a little looser. So if you make the end kind of bell out a little bit bigger, so that as it dries up, it wedges farther in there. But with a froe handle, it never has to be really tight. I mean, my froe handle is, it's going to lie to me this time. Yeah, it's going to lie to me this time. I can't pull it out. Most of the time, my froe handle, I could slide it in and out without much problem. It does not have to be tight. Okay, let's put this thing together and give it a little test on this.
Just so you know, you're at 59 minutes.
Yeah, we're going to go over a little bit on this one. Where'd the screw go?
On a particular piece of
There it
wood.
is. Yeah, we just put this together. So, here, I'll let you do it. I'll let you talk through, or I'll talk you through it. So, screw that in. And what we're going to want to do on this is we're going to want the chip breaker to be about a 1/16 inch away from the tip. So I'd move it to about an 1/8 inch away and tighten it down. And get pretty close to tight. Here, wait, let me show you. We're going to get it, let's see how tight, just so I can feel it. Not full screwdriver tight, just a little bit tight. Then you come to the back here and tap it forward. So if you really want to get it right up tight to the edge, you can use this to slowly work it up. And so that is where I want it for 99% of the work.
Okay.
On this, it's, let's see if I can get this to focus on here. It's just sticking out a hair. It's probably 30-second, a little more than a 30-second, close to that. But that's about where I want it. So then once it's in there, tweak it down. Here. Let me grab a scrap of wood. So what I'll do is I'll pick up the heel, put it on here, so that you can slide it in without it having to hit the iron tip.
Now you got me thinking, am I putting it in the right way?
Nope, chip breaker on the top.
Yeah.
Don't worry, I've done that too. Okay, now when it gets in here, we want to make sure we shift it side to side, because we want to make sure that the lateral adjuster fits into that.
Okay.
Because a lot of times the lateral adjuster will be off here to the side, and it's not sitting all the way down flat. So if the lateral adjuster comes in, you wait until you get that full bed down on there. Okay?
Okay.
And then go ahead and tighten that down. Pretty good, not fully tight, just close to it. That's good. Now, different schools of thought will have different things. Some people will look along the iron to see it sticking out. Personally, I like to feel it. So I stick my finger underneath like that, and then I'll run my screw until I just feel it. And it's sticking out here, but not there. So then I move my lateral adjuster to the side it's sticking out. So it's sticking out on this side. Just going to move this a tweak over. Yeah, it's a little too tight. Why is that having a problem? Is it too far over? Oh, it's all the way out. Okay, so here's we got a new issue. On this one, the lateral adjuster is all the way over this way. And it's not far enough because this is sticking out too much. So what we can do, take this, tap the iron over, just like an old-fashioned wooden. It's still not sticking out. All right, next option is the iron is sitting too far over one side or the other. So if you slide it all the way over to one side rather than it being on this side, I push it all the way over that side. I want to slide it all the way over to that side. And then I can move the lateral adjuster here. And with it all loose like this, I'm just going to feel, yeah, that's where I want it to be. And that's going to be one of the common problems with cheaper planes, is that a lot of people love the lateral adjuster to be right in the middle. There's no reason for it to be. It's just going to take a little more fiddling to set up. Okay, and so now it's sticking out too much. So we're going to back it up. Whoop, wrong way.
Yeah, I usually need to
Until it
look
goes
at it
in.
when I'm doing that.
Okay, there. I can feel it's just on the edge. It's sticking out just a hair. So I want to move it just a little bit more until it disappears inside. So it's not doing it, it's not sticking out at all. And then we can take it for the test drive. So let's grab some hickory. Oh my, hickory. Let's actually start with something as a smooth surface. It'll give us a little quicker reading. And then we'll go to the hickory. Hickory is about as bad as it gets. So, here. You're right-handed?
Yes.
I'll let you stand over here then.
We have a super chat. Just
Oh, what you got?
So, Homesteading Northern Michigan says, very well
Give it a
done,
try.
James. Thumbs up for our amazing host, everyone.
Oh, thanks, man. Here, give it a try on that and see if it takes a shaving. It shouldn't because it's up a little higher. Here, move it back a little farther, are you?
Knock the camera over.
I'm used to working around cameras.
I'll be paying you off for a couple of years.
Okay, no shaving.
So no shaving.
So advance the iron a little bit.
And that's to the right.
So at this point, I do about a quarter turn.
Okay.
And give it another push. And another quarter turn.
So to the right or to the left?
It is turning it out. It's top that way.
Okay.
Okay, here's another thing. You were turning it and nothing is happening. So if I spin this, it's just spinning. So I'm going to spin it until it actually engages,
Okay.
and then I go a quarter turn from there.
Okay.
Okay.
Now let's grab it.
So now we got a heavy cut on there.
Okay.
So now let's back it up. Now when we back it up, we have to move it until it until it actually engages the other way. Give it that quarter turn, and then run it back the other way, because we always want the yoke pushing it forward.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Okay, let's see what shaving we got on there. So that is actually, that's a good general shaving.
Okay.
That's probably about a little less than 1/100 of an inch. So let's actually back it off a little bit more. So I'm going to loosen it up this way, give it a quarter turn, and then tighten
Alan
it down
says
again.
to zoom in.
Oh, let me put the other camera on that, sorry. Okay, you feel that was kind of like skipping?
That was skipping it. It was
Yeah.
very light.
That's what you're looking for.
And so advance again a little bit.
Well, here, do it one more time. And there, you see how you're putting a little bit more pressure into it, and it was holding the whole way along. So that's a finishing shaving right there.
Okay.
That is, if I measured it, just over about 1/1000 of an inch. Yeah, it's just over 1/1000 of an inch or so. So that's where I'd have it for finishing shaving. At this point, you're going to get a nice glossy surface, and it's going to be... Here, let me feel it, because I want to...
Okay.
I can get a lot from hearing, but not as much from feel. And I'm going to grab it up here, fingers underneath as my fence, thumb on top here. Oh yeah. That's about 5/1000th, I guess. So I can actually make it a little bit finer if I loosen it up. Oops, the other way. So I loosen it just an 1/8 turn, and then run it back until it touches tight again. See how fine we can get it. A little bit more. 1/8 turn, run it back until it touches again. And go a little more. 1/8 turn.
There you go.
Yeah, we can get thinner than that. Let's do 2/8. 2/8 or quarter inch. Quarter. Yeah, there, I'm not getting anything. I'm getting this one wisp on that side. So if I wanted to, I could move the lateral adjuster like that much. Now I'm not getting just a little bit
Still
on
on
the
the right.
side. So let's move about that much. There we go. Now we're getting that. That's about 1/2,000th. So here, once you feel what that feels like.
Okay, thank you.
Now this is feeling what true sharp feels like is kind of one of those things that is an aha moment.
Oh yeah, very smooth.
Yeah, that's finishing surface. But it's very rare that I ever set up a plane to actually work like that. Even when I'm doing my final smoothing, that's a lot thinner than I'd ever use.
Now why here at the end?
Usually-
Am I getting on the left side but not on the right?
Just a little bit more pressure on one side or the other.
Okay.
Because the wood compresses one way or the other. Just putting a little bit more pressure on one side or the other will give you more force on one side or the other. And especially when you get down to shavings this thick, the amount of movement one way or the other
Yeah,
will
that
give
one
you
was-
wildly different amounts. But yeah, it's fun. So most of the time, let's see, this shaving right here is what I would consider a good thin shaving. It's probably about 5 or 6/1000th. That's a good thin shaving. Not quite what I'd have for this would be a smoothing pass, probably about 2 or 3/1000ths. And then these
Okay,
wisps
hang
that
on.
you're doing.
Which camera do you think you're on?
Oh, sorry. These wisps that you're doing earlier that are, gossamer, they're 1/2,000th.
Right.
Almost never do that. But it's fun. A thick shaving, like this one here, that's a good 1/100th of an inch. It's kind of crispy.
Yeah.
That is what I usually have these planes set at.
Okay.
So you're taking off a decent amount. You're moving the wood. But, if you're 2 or 3 shavings one way or the other, it's not going to make a difference in joinery. That's just the functional amount. But if you can do this, you can do anything else. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense. And it feels good, because all I was getting was jamming and tearing out this wood. And
Yeah, and I can tell you
Yeah.
probably 99% of that was just the chip breaker that we did at the beginning.
okay,
The chip breaker does so much in how the plane actually functions. If the chip breaker isn't set up well, you just jam. And anytime that the mouth gets clogged, most of the time it's the chip breaker. If there's any amount of space in here, like in this one, we've got a little less than a 1/16 of an inch of a gap in there, and that's where I'm going to keep it most of the time. Unless I'm going on really, really difficult wood, where the grain's switching all over the place, I'll move it up to 1/100th of an inch or so away from the mouth. But with 1/100th of an inch, you're not going to be jamming unless the chip breaker has a problem.
okay.
People will normally be worried about, my mouth is so small, I'm jamming. Jams rarely happen because the mouth is small. They usually happen because the chip breaker's clogging it.
Yeah, and that's what I was playing with a lot, was the mouth, and it was too wide, it was too skinny, and I just couldn't get it, and I didn't realize it was.
Here, let me show you this. That's my smoothing plane. That ragged, holy mouth. That's what I use.
Do you want to put on the other? Yeah.
So I don't know if you guys can see. Let's see if I can focus on it. Come on.
Ooh.
That is my smoothing plane mouth. It is a mess, but it works. The amount of times you actually need a really fine mouth is very, very limited. And for that, then I'll bring in my custom. And this is the one that I have dialed in into all sorts of craziness, but I can have the adjustable mouth on this by moving it over with that, so that makes it a lot easier. Yeah. I think we're going to wrap it up on that. So I'm going to actually hang around with you for a little bit.
Okay.
If anyone here does want to be on a one-on-one sometime, let me know. I've got a few other people I'm talking to, and we might do something like this. Sorry it's gone a little late. I've been wanting to play with the whole method and see how this goes. I kind of realized that I'm going to have to do more of a concise amount. But yeah, if you'd like to find out more about that, let me know. I want to say a huge thanks for coming in.
No, thank you. It was a
fun.
great lesson. Take him up on his offer, 'cause it was well worth it. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, on that note, unless I'm forgetting anything.
No. Okay. So y'all, I know we didn't get to a lot of questions.
Sorry.
Send James a message. He'll answer them. I promise.
Yeah, send me an
Discord,
email.
Facebook.
On my.
On the contact me page.
And we'll get to them. So thank you. Sorry, it's been a new format. We've been playing around with it and seeing how it goes. We will be adjusting things and seeing what we can do in the future. So I think that'll do it for now. And until next time, have a wonderful day.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks.